Jeff, there was news that came out. What was it? Kind of a little bit last night, and then it made its way to the national media pretty much, at the midpoint day today that Ohio State interviewed Matt Patricia, the former Patriots defensive coordinator, two-time Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator. He also was offensive coordinator for the Patriots for a year, or was he a year or two? I don't think that went very well from what I remember. So, he probably not going to get an offensive coordinator job anytime soon, but he had a stint with the Eagles. That didn't really work out. He's been out of football coaching for about a year or two, if I'm correct. There's a lot of Ohio State fans that are upset about this. There's other Ohio State fans that are kind of like, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see. Jeff, what's kind of your thoughts on this whole situation here? Ryan Day choosing to possibly not go with maybe an internal hire to go with Matt Patricia as well. And then also the rumor that DJ Durkin got his contract extension because Ohio State was wanting to hire him, the Auburn defensive coordinator. I mean, what do you make of Ohio State pursuing guys like Matt Patricia and DJ Durkin?
So, first of all, when you showed me that this was going to be a topic tonight, one of the first articles I just looked up, some person was saying if Ohio State makes this move of getting Patricia, it would be a total disaster. I would just say, just like there is no slam dunk home run hires, there's nothing to say, oh, that would definitely be a disaster. I think that's a ridiculous statement. Do I have concerns? Yes. But, the allure of getting coaches with NFL experience is strong. Bringing a coordinator into the college level that has NFL experience has been successful by many, many teams, including Ohio State's biggest rival, of course, Michigan. And the other thing is, obviously, Patricia coached under Bill Belichick, probably many consider the best defensive mind maybe of any coach of all time. For some consider him, right? That was really the success is his expertise on the defense. And then he had a coach as a quarterback in Tom Brady, and you end up with 6 Super Bowls or whatever it was. So, Bill Belichick doesn't hire someone and keep them on their staff unless they're really good at what they do. Now, definitely have a concern, though, with him, being out of the game a while, not being a defensive coordinator. I think he played a role actually doing some offensive play calling for the Patriots, which is really kind of unusual in my mind. Even though that didn't work out, I think he learned a lot from that. I know he was a head coach and not successful, but I'm a big believer in from your failures, that's when you can learn the most. Just look at Ohio State. From their failure against Oregon, they made changes and all of a sudden had this elite defense. And then the Michigan loss, and then they parlayed that into a championship. So just because someone has some failures doesn't mean, they wouldn't have learned from that. So bottom line, I don't know if this is good or bad. To say it's a disaster to me is ridiculous, though, but it does have risk. The other thing that was brought up with Patricia is, his personality is going to rub you wrong. He's not going to be a great recruiter. Heck, I don't think Jim Knowles was a big recruiter for Ohio State. He had a great defensive staff under him, and that defensive staff was doing the heavy lifting on the recruiting. And I think that's the case for a lot of these. I don't think Chip Kelly was a huge, great recruiter for us, right? Despite being an excellent play caller. So those are my thoughts. Kind of a mixed bag, JR. I'm not saying I love it or hate it, but there's some things you can say this could work out pretty good, right? Bringing NFL ideas to Ohio State's not a bad thing. And then, there's other things to say, well, maybe this is not the greatest idea.
Yeah, I've been very cautious about how I view this Matt Patricia, kind of smoke here. Obviously, it's just an interview. We'll see what it comes to. But I think Billy Tuesday's right. Like Matt Patricia would be a polarizing hire for Buckeye fan base. It's true. Like there are so many that are so much against it. There's others that are like, well, he is an NFL guy. Let's see what he does. And Ryan Day makes good hires. Let's see how Ryan Day's hiring does with it. I will say, I think it really went south for him when he went to Detroit and didn't go well there as a head coach. And part of that, I'm not making any excuses for him, but I just do think this is relevant to point out. Part of the issue there was he didn't treat the media well. And when you don't treat the media is going to try to bury you as much as possible. Not just the media members you're rude to, but like the media does kind of look out for each other in some ways. Like I'm not going to name any names here, but earlier in the season, shouldn't even see it, earlier in the season after the Michigan game, Will Howard was up doing his press conference and somebody asked him a question and he kind of gave like a snarky answer back to one of the reporters. And I was listening to another reporter talk about the situation, and he said, "Well, I always thought Will Howard was a nice guy, but then I saw him treat that media member like that, and now I just think he's a terrible guy." And I was like, Will Howard has been excellent in press conferences and everything all year long. Like he gives one answer that you don't like that maybe was a little bit snarky and like didn't exactly go your way, and then now you're just gonna write him off as like bad dude. Like I don't know. So there definitely is an aspect to that, and I do wonder how much of this kind of media shaping of who Matt Patricia is negative because of the way he treated the media. You talk to players, there are some players that say they don't like him. Guess what? There were also some players that said they didn't like Chip Kelly. I was listening to Bobby Carpenter on his show earlier today. Bobby Carpenter played a year or two for the Patriots. He was there, and when Matt Patricia was the defensive coordinator there, he said he loved Matt. He said Matt was great, highly intelligent, did a really good job communicating, was a good teacher, and he didn't have any complaints with him. Now, maybe he just really liked Bobby Carpenter, and that's why he didn't have any complaints. But as far as I'm concerned, I do want to be careful how much I read into some of what was said about Patricia before, because it could just be media bias of we don't like the way he treated some of our, other media members out there.
What's interesting about that comment, I didn't even think of that, but think of who he was under. Bill Belichick. Think of Bill Belichick's news conferences, right? He was like
And Bill Belichick
intentionally.
could afford to do that because he won Super Bowls, right?
That's
Like,
the difference. That's the difference. When you're winning, you can do whatever the hell you want. Just ask me about, Bobby Knight. I'm an Indiana guy, but so yeah. So Patricia's like, well, that's the way you do it, right? And it gets the learning process, and I'm sure he'd probably do it a little different if he had to do it all over again. And there can definitely be media bias. I mean, the media hated Urban Meyer too. Hates Urban Meyer, right? And
but he
they
won.
loved it when he went to the pros and fell on his face, right? They
Yep.
loved it. And so and the other thing with that is, you could be a great coach in college. Maybe it doesn't work out in the pros. For him, he wasn't a great coach in the pros, but maybe he's one of those guys he's a damn good ball coach as a coordinator, right? Where he's game planning, right? Doesn't have to worry about too much about recruiting. Maybe that's a good fit for him. So, yeah, I don't know what to conclude on this. I can see Ohio State fans being concerned, but he's still pretty damn intriguing to me, given that strong NFL and then coming from the Belichick tree, so to speak.
Yeah. I think if Ohio State made an internal hire to be co-defensive coordinator with him, I would feel better about it. Like maybe Matt Guerrieri is the co-defensive coordinator and he's the one calling plays, and maybe Matt Patricia is just, pretty much the scheme guy that really goes in deep and, kind of like Jim Knowles was, where he just kind of sits in his office and does scheme all day, and lets the position coaches really be the ones that teaches it more than anything else. But again, like he could also be one of those people, and I know I'm making a lot of excuses for Matt Patricia here. I'm just trying to give a different angle because I feel like the angle of would be a terrible hire has been pretty far out there. Like most people are aware of that, and it's been spoken about a lot. There's also the angle of he's learned his lesson now, right? Like he's learned his lesson. He's not Bill Belichick. He can't treat the media like that. He can't treat his players like that. And so maybe he comes into Ohio State and he tells Ryan Day, I want to be better at treating my players the right way and doing this and doing that. Like, I recognize I'm not Bill Belichick, and who knows, maybe the Buckeye culture does more to change Patricia than Patricia does to change the Buckeye culture.
Right. I mean, they're bringing him in to saying, here's what we need you to do. We need you to game plan. So when we're playing Oregon, we stay
Yeah,
one step ahead of them, because in the first game, they were one step ahead of us. We played them again, and we were definitely one step ahead of them in the Rose Bowl, right? So it's like, and if he doesn't have to worry about all these other things tied to, and this is going to tie to one of my big questions and what I'm proposing for one team, but when you're, the head coach, you have so much to manage. It's hard to be an offensive and defensive coordinator versus a head coach. The responsibilities are quite different between those two jobs. It's kind
I
of like
agree.
night and day, to be honest.
I agree. I agree. A couple comments to get to really quick, and then we'll get to our commercial and then get to our offensive line stuff. We got Yankee Wolverine. Yankee, thank you for being here. He says, I was sorry to see DJ Durkin leave Michigan and really sorry to see who replaced him. I forget who replaced. Do you remember that, Jeff? Who replaced
No,
Durkin? Was it
no,
was it Brown?
that was a while ago, because he left to go to Maryland, right, to be the head coach at Maryland. Durkin,
Yes.
he went
Yeah,
straight
you're
there,
right.
and
Yeah.
then that
Yeah, I don't recall
was it one
who
of the young
replaced him.
guys, the one of the
I'll,
young,
I'll look it up during the commercial.
yeah,
I'll
yeah.
look it up during the commercial. We got Doreen here. He says, "Hey JR and gang, hello Doreen. Thanks for being here, Doreen. This is Jeff. Jeff has his website that he writes on. So I know you love all the Buckeye and Big Ten and stuff like that content. So go check out Jeff's content. What's the URL for it again, Jeff?
Bigjeffsfootball.com.
There you go. There you go. So everybody go check out Jeff's content. He does a good job. There we go. Doreen saying hi, Jeff. There we go. We much appreciate Doreen here. She does a great job helping other people know more about podcasts and everything. Does good work. So, all right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see. One more. Let's see. I can't find it. Uh, oh, here. Pit Snipe Husker says, Saturday is a solid bet. JR is correct. The media is fickle. Outside of Ohio State, we'll all hate him. We'll rue the day we didn't hire him. I mean, Ohio State media can be like that a little bit too, but and I get it sometimes too, right? Like sometimes you're just trying to ask a question when you're a media member, and to have a coach or somebody like, try to embarrass you, it's like, so I'm not so much blaming the media, but at the same time, I'm like,
It's a two-way
like
street.
this, yeah,
Yeah.
let's not try to destroy somebody just because maybe they were in a bad mood that day because they just lost a game. Like it is what it is. I get in a bad mood when I don't have a good drive to work. So it would be it really suck for me if I had to go in and talk to media after a bad drive to work or something like that. So